today and what makes science communication so fascinating. Just give me a second. Dr. Mo, I think I need help again. Okay, all right. Wait.
Okay.
Okay, can you just help? Okay, there we go. Thank you. All right, so it's going to be, this is what we're going to be focusing on. I'm just going to give you a brief intro about myself. I know a lot of everybody in the room. I think you know me a little bit, but I'll try to give you something that you don't know already. Then we'll unpack science communication a bit. What is it about? Why does it matter? And then we'll move on to, does communicating science even matter? Then we'll focus on the target audiences, some misconceptions, because there are quite a lot out there, some strategies, and then we nicely wrap it up. Okay, so a little bit about myself. My name is Kuda Brandt. I've been in the media industry, I think, for approximately 13 years now. I've had the privilege of working in the private sector as well as now in the academic sector. So it is very different spaces, but it's nice because it gives you a holistic picture of exactly what communication is about. So you get a perspective from the journalism side, because I was a journalist before and a TV presenter back in the day. So that was very nice. So you get to know both sides of, especially when you come into the academic space. So like I said, as listed there, I've had a touch of radio, I've had TV, I've had print, and now more as it becomes more of a thing in society, social media. I think there's still so much to unwrap about social media, so we'll have a discussion about that. Unpacking science communication. What is science communication? Before I even go into what science communication is, perhaps just from the floor, when you think about communication, let's take out the science bit. What do you, very simple terms, how would you define communication? Please feel free to just jump in. You'll have to shout, we're still working on the mics.
Communication, I would say sharing information and getting feedback. That's what I would say.
Nice and simple.
Giving and getting.
Yes. And I think also comprehension is key. You know, I'll talk to that a bit later as well, because I think sometimes even in our personal lives, communication is constantly something you're learning. You sometimes send a message to somebody and you think you've said the basics, but the way the person interprets it or the way the person receives it, now you have to make a call. Now you have to clarify and. So I think it's a lifelong journey. Now, on top of that, and that's just basic communication in our lives. Now add science to that, so that makes it a little bit tricky. But the definition here that we have of science communication is transferring critical science matters to various audiences with the intention of informing decision-making processes. So the reason why it is important to communicate science is you're just basically trying to break it down to somebody who's not in your field. You know all this jargon, you know all these fancy terms, but how do you bring it to the layperson? How do you bring it to the average person on the street? How do you bring it to the politicians that are actually, at the end of the day, the policymakers? Because yes, fine, you might have all these qualifications and everything, but if the person that is sitting behind that desk where they're signing off policies and so forth, you have to speak a language that is convincing. You have to make them understand why it is important. So I think it's very important to be able to speak to different audiences, know who you're talking to. If you're talking to scientists, by all means, flex your English language, go all out. If you're talking to the average people in the street without dumbing it down, be able to make sense. Branches of science. Now, obviously, this is there are lots of definitions. There are lots of discussions around this, because some people say, no, it's not a hard science, it's not a real science, it's a social science, and the debate goes on. But those are just some branches of science you can see there. You see mathematics, astronomy, medicine, everything is quite a wide variety. And like I said, there are also discussions to say, is stuff like social sciences, is humanities, is it a science? So there's a lot of debate about that, but we can have that discussion another day. Science is everywhere. So sometimes these are just newspaper clips we took from local newspapers just to see some of the discussions that are taking place. For instance, you look at that bioeconomy plan nears implementation. So those are just the various ways news is reported in the media. I'll speak very largely to media, number one, because that's my area of expertise. Number two, I really think that it is important to realize that we need to partner with journalists. We need to partner with media, especially as you advance in your career. these are the foot soldiers, if I can call them that, that are going to take the news out there, and I'll tell you why at a later stage. One of the biggest discussions right now in Namibia is green hydrogen. So you'll hear about that often. So whether you were into newspapers or you're not, but that's a thing right now. So it's always interesting to know, especially being in the water space, is there room for you in there? Can you relate to it? Is it totally out of your space? But it's always interesting, especially when I say this for particularly international students or just international experts. I think when you're operating in a certain country, in a new country, that's not your home country, it's very important to be in touch with what's happening on the ground. You don't have to know every single little thing, every single news piece, but just to be able to bring things to context, because you're not operating in a vacuum. This is home for the next 3 years. So you need to know what's going on. You need to immerse yourself, not only in the space of what's happening in news, but in the culture itself, yeah, because we are global citizens after all. And then here, does communicating science even matter? Maybe before I go there, in the audience, any thoughts on that? Do you think it matters? Is it a thing? Is it extra effort? What do you think? Tafila. I'm going to start going for names now, but yeah, and people online as well. You want to support that statement, maybe? Not to put you in a spot. Yeah. Mumbe,
Yeah, I think it
come to Tafila's rescue.
does matter, because the whole idea is to communicate some idea to someone else.
Yes.
Not to send a message. If it doesn't matter, then it's more like you just keep all those ideas to yourself. No one will benefit what you may know.
Thank you. That is a very valid point, because I think sometimes as human beings, not even necessarily in the science space, but just in general with the work that you do, we tend to sometimes gravitate towards just me, me, me. You forget you're a global citizen. You belong in a space. What is it that you're giving back to the community? How are you going to give this back to the community? Great. You get your PhD, you get the second one, maybe all these accolades, but how are you giving back? So it must go beyond that. And one way you can do this is through science communication, through educating, sharing your expertise with others. Because I think at the end of the day, that is what it is about being human. It's not only for you to keep and take home and have all your pretty accolades decorated there. No, it's about giving back. So thank you for that. Then which answers also the question that we just asked, does communicating science even matter? So Russell 2010 attests that having a minority in a democracy conversant with science and technology produces a low level of public discussion and makes for impoverished policy making. So when there isn't enough people that are educated enough to have these kind of conversations, it makes it very difficult. The level of discussion in the public is at a level that it should not be. Of course, this is a tall order. You cannot just change the world in one day, but you have to play a part in your corner, so that is, be it from high school level all the way to the ordinary person in the street, there is that role or that responsibility to educate others. Then here, this is conveying the message that whilst policymakers have the responsibility of making decisions aligned to national agendas, this is informed by the general public discussions that affect them. That is a very key point. I'd like, if I can call it politics. Politics exists whether we like it or not. And the moment something is, especially in the media and it's public discussion and it's affecting the communities and they're bringing it to our attention, it's most likely to get the attention of policymakers. The reason I speak so broadly and speak so extensively about policymakers is because it affects all of us. You see, so at the end of the day, it's about all these educated minds in this room to play a role in informing the decision makers. If you can even have the decision makers be scientists themselves, then that is so much better, so that helps. But in the interim or in the absence of such, then it is our duty. The more educated the populace is, the more educated the discussions. I'm sure sometimes I'm sure some your face is not good. I'm sure sometimes we all go to social media and you cringe. You're like, how? How is this possible that people cannot see the fault lines? People cannot see that no, this does not make sense. I saw a funny thing. I saw a meme the other day that said that one of the people that you cannot convince are the anti-vaxxers. It's so difficult to get somebody to, doesn't matter what education level it is, if they've decided that this is what it is, you cannot change their minds. Religion as well is very difficult to change their minds. So that in itself is also speaks to the fact that it's got nothing to do with education level. Yeah, it's also our own convictions, our own upbringing and everything. So you want to influence these things. So yeah, Faith, what do you think about that? I saw you nodding your head.
No. I think on that list, there's also, you cannot also have a conversation with a woman in love and a man with money.
Yes, and yes, which also shows that as at the end of the day, we're human beings, so you're going to associate even to your feelings as well. You can't help that as much as you've got all the theoretical expertise or perhaps even the practical expertise, you still have that in the back of your mind because that is what you believe in. So to even speak to that is very difficult, but we have to have these conversations, especially where social media is concerned. There is so much misinformation out there and people believe it. So it is up to scientists. It's a collective effort for everybody to play that role. Yes, this I think we spoke to as well. I will come back to this point. All right. Okay. Now, back again to does commuting science even matter? For example, information on health science can aid in people making better dietary decisions. That's a very basic one, but that is very true because if people understand, you can't just eat whatever you feel, like it's got implications. I think sometimes we're also such visual beings. You look at somebody, if they look okay, you're like, okay, they're fine. But you need to know, you need to have checkups, you need to have all these things. Simple, but you need to be educated. That's why even when development organizations reach out to communities and they're speaking about things, say family planning, people need to understand why must I use this method to ensure that these proper family planning, the implications thereof. So all those things are very important, and that counts as science communication as well, because that's more into the health sector. So there's a wide range of things so that people need to know why they're doing these things. And then also, so another example, say on renewable energy, it can encourage users to make better choices for electricity options. We keep being told there are all these, we're depleting the Earth's resources. What can we do to make the world a better place? Why does it matter? Why, if I want to keep my light on the whole day, if I want to do, you know what I mean? So stuff like that must be communicated beyond just saying A, B, C, and D. This is what you must do. Why must I do it? Okay, and then on a larger scale, new developments in science have improved the livelihoods of society by improving economies. For instance, by applying scientific methods in agricultural sectors, thereby improving the yield and food production. Just a little brief break, if I can call it that. 1 minute challenge before I call out names. Sounds like a threat, eh? But before, if there are any volunteers in the room, just to tell me what it is your research about in 1 minute. Now I'll give you some time just to think about it. And I'll explain why. 1 minute once you've explained. I love the no eye contact, huh? It's a strategy to say I'm not, yeah. Maria, hi. Very brief. I'll tell you why I'm asking. Just your research. If you're so look at it this way, you're explaining to a wide audience. So it's not only people in your field of expertise. Tell us what let me put it this way. What is your research about, or rather your research interest? We can make it a bit broader. What is your field about?
And also securing the detecting system.
Perfect. I'll accept that. Thank you. Now, did anyone understand that?
Here from back home. So
Maria, do you mind repeating?
Detecting anomalies in water systems.
Now, I'm sure also asking everybody in the room is not a very fair thing because I think everybody has a little bit sound understanding, a little bit of the field. But thank you, Maria. While what I was trying to demonstrate there is to say the terms that you use, very correct, very high level, and that is correct in an academic space. But now when we have to take it out now to say policymakers, I'm not even going to go for the average person on the street. Would they understand that? How would you rephrase that in very basic terms without compromising the quality of the level of intellect that it focuses on? Very basic. If you, as they say, if you have to explain to a 10-year-old, it's fine. But this is what I'm trying to get at. You see, it's very difficult to get out of your, yes, Alex?
Oh, I just, I don't know if Barbara shares an example, but because of anomalies, I just wanted to share. I'm a climate scientist. I'm working in the climate office at USAID, and I actually was told not to say temperature anomalies when I was describing climate change.
You're going to tell us why?
Because the audience doesn't understand the word anomaly. So I've started saying differences in temperature from the reference period in the 19th century.
Wow.
Oh, okay. I just say differences from history.
Yes.
Temperature, actually.
Thank you so much. And you're both correct. Maria is very right in what she said, because when she's speaking to an expert audience, they're going to get that. She doesn't even need to change that vocabulary. Whereas where you're speaking, you've broken it down so that it's applicable or understood by the wider audience. So thank you so much, ladies. That worked out well. Then, okay, so basically, who are the target audiences? That's always very important when you're communicating, because you know exactly how to craft your message. You cannot just, yes, as much as we're encouraging talking to a wide audience, but it also really helps to know who are you speaking to. So like I said earlier on, when you go for your conferences, that's also a very key thing. D is fine, highly likely at an academic conference, you're speaking to academics, but you also want to know what their expertise is. You're not going to know about every single person in the room, but you're just going to have an idea, who am I talking to? So that helps you craft your messages. Am I talking to emerging researchers? Am I talking to established researchers? Is it a mix? So stuff like that makes a big difference. Do I need to use my... Can you hear me? No. Now can you hear me? Okay, great. Okay, the lawmakers, we spoke to this as well. The media. Now, this is something that I'm very passionate about, because I think it's so important to know the media, because they have different mandates. Whether you're speaking to you must know, for instance, a tabloid magazine. If you're speaking to a tabloid and they come to you and they ask you about COVID, tabloid by nature are looking for juicy stories. They're looking for controversial things. They're looking for this. So to know that helps you, because now you know, okay, maybe let me stay away from this one. Yeah, and that's okay. It's your right. Or if I'm going to tackle this head on, let me address the controversial matters. Let's talk about it. So also, if it's state owned, for instance, then you know their target audience are the politicians, you know, so they're going to craft their message, they're going to write their stories based on that. So it always helps to know that if it's another paper, for instance, their mandate might be reaching out to the youth. So you also know, okay, you want to make it a bit hip. You want to make sure that you then speak about your social media platforms that people can follow you on, because that's normally for the youth. So it's always, again, goes back to knowing your target audience. Scientists in your field, I'm sure a lot of you would be comfortable with this one, because you don't have to change your language. If anything, you need to step up because these are people that know the field very well, which is also okay, because I think just in general, sometimes we tend to shy away from criticism, but it's okay. And it's all how you handle it, and that's how you learn, right? At the end of the day. So that's awesome. And then scientists that are not in your field. Why is this important? Because it also then just helps you to even take a multidisciplinary approach to your things. So sometimes your work is not just single in a single lane, so to put it. Jimmy, and this actually just reminds me, tell us what your field is about, because that, I think I found that very interesting because it's a multidisciplinary approach. I never thought you could bring these two worlds together, but yeah, tell us about it briefly, please.
So
Do you have, sorry, I need to give you the mic. Okay, thank you.
my topic has to do with.
Is it on?
My topic has to do with developing a smart water system that will make use of artificial intelligence to deal with the water quality problem or water monitoring issue, water quality monitoring issue.
Okay, great. So the two things I picked up from there is water, putting it very broadly, water and artificial intelligence, and bringing those together. So that I found that very interesting. So I think that's also a very good example. Everybody here has very good examples of what they are studying, but that one I think speaks specifically to the multidisciplinary approach, which is why, again, it's important to not only focus on your community, but beyond that. Now this, there are some scientists that are very skeptical to speaking to the media, understandably so, because they say that, so the top one, just to explain it, this is now the journalist interviewing the scientist, and he says, we destroyed 10% of cancer cells in a lab rat's tail. Yeah, that's what he said. That's what he explained. This is what we've done. This is what it is. In the paper now at the bottom, when they publish their story, they say cancer cured. You see the mismatch sometimes that's there, but one of many, in fact, many things could have happened there. Either the scientists didn't articulate themselves well, they used a lot of jargon, they used a lot of big words, it did not translate to the journalist, or the journalist probably works for a tabloid and they're focused on sensationalism. That too does happen. Yeah, so there is a mismatch, and it's stuff like that you want to avoid, because what actually happens with the media, you don't, very rarely, unless it's a paid for article or an advert, that you actually have the power, so to put it, to see an article before it's published. So you have the interview and then it's published the next day. So it's stuff like this we just would like to avoid. So I think it's just to at least try and be as clear as possible and to say, this is what I said, which is why sometimes it is better to, especially something like that, you'd also want it recorded. Then should it ever become controversial, should some organization come for you, you can say, no, but I have it on record, this is what I said. So power of the screenshot or power of you need these things, you need to protect yourself. Okay, some of the misconceptions. It's perceived that this is now for people that don't feel it's necessary. Why should I go an extra mile to communicate science? Why should I dumb down my language and oversimplify very complicated matters? So that misconception is there. We'll demystify it in a minute. And then researchers and scientists would rather publish in academic publications. They see it as more beneficial. Your peers get to see it. But then again, you're still keeping in that bubble. You see, you're not taking it outside. There's nothing wrong with publishing in these spaces, but I'm just saying take it a bit broader. Again, it's seen as time-consuming to package messages for different audiences. It's difficult to communicate to a broad audience about complex matters. I've touched on that one. And like this one as well, communicating to the media especially opens up room for interrogation and sensationalism. Just from the floor, would you be comfortable to talk to the media? Say they come in, we had a function, and they say, okay, Faith, I want to speak to you about what you're studying right now. Are you comfortable just generally? Are you camera shy? How would you feel about that?
Yeah, I would tell them.
Please use the microphone.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
Is it on?
hello.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I would. But then I think what would also make me
be a bit more comfortable, would have been maybe prior to the interview, then they can give me the questions that they would like me to respond to. And then I just have like that brainstorm at the back of my mind
Yeah.
on points that I can fit.
Which is very valid, and that is the ideal way. Like I said, to also have stuff on record is very important. The only challenge that I can highlight with you with that is sometimes, say, if we had an event today and then the media wants to speak to you, they want to broadcast that for tonight's news. You see, so sometimes there isn't that room to send you questions by the time you send them back, which I completely understand. Like I said, coming from the media side and now coming into the academic space, I get it. I want to write I want to be them. I want them to be thought through. I want to make sure I've got everything on record. But do you also see now the other side that's there? You see, because they want to have that for tonight. So I get the both sides. What I would advise in a case like that is to still have that discussion before, to say, look, before we switch on the camera, can we focus on A, B, C, and D? And if they throw in a curveball, to just try take them back to a space that you're comfortable with, and you speak, and then you can be confident what I said was indeed factual. It's a tricky situation. It's like social media. You put stuff out there, you don't know how it's going to be interpreted, but you cannot shy away. This is just what reality is. As you're called to a higher order, so to put it, you're going to be expected to speak in public spaces. So whether you're the CEO of a research institute or whatever space you're in, or you start your own business or whatever it is that you're doing in your field of work, you're going to need to have those presentation skills. You're going to need to be able to speak to wide audiences. I've got a son, he's 7. So the other day they had an assignment and they had to present. He's in grade 1. So I'm thinking, what does a grade 1 know about presenting? It's a lot of work. It's a lot of pressure. So some of them were very shy. Some of them could freely speak. I think something very basic just to talk about their holiday. So, and I'm thinking, okay, this is a lot of pressure. But when you really unpack it and really look at it, that is the age to start, because I think sometimes we only then pick up these presentation skills or try to learn to speak in a public space when you're called to it, when you're now in the work environment that requires it, or maybe at high school, if you're lucky, if they teach you that at high school. But I think if that starts from a young age, if it's nurtured from a young age, then I think we'll be home and dry. Okay, now these are just something that also, like I said, speaks to some challenges that are seen in the media. There's very limited coverage of science in the media. The reason being, it's a twofold thing. On the one end, journalists also feel like it's a lot of work. I'm also spending a lot of time. I don't want to get things wrong. I don't want to spend time now researching A, B, C, and D. News is perishable. It's a fast-moving environment. So it just takes too long. Let me go for the low-hanging fruit. Let me just get what I can get out there. But that doesn't always work, because this is why there's not a lot of coverage in the media, or enough coverage rather, about science. You do get the media houses that do have designated slots, be it on TV, be it on radio, be it in their print newspapers that are focused on certain sectors. That's okay. So that's coming up. That's something we can applaud. But more can be done, because there's also this perception, just like with mathematics, to say it's difficult. It's too, especially at high school level, nobody wants to do that, but we need the expertise. And when you also look at it, it's just that I don't have the stats right now, but if you could look at the amount of publications that are coming from higher education institutions or elsewhere in comparison to what is being spoken about, obviously they can't always be a match, but I'm just trying to highlight that with all the research that's done, should it end in journals only, or it should also be taken out? It needs to go beyond that. Then, so because of that, then there isn't adequate training. Some countries are fortunate enough to have science journalists, for instance. So someone who specifically, they call it a beat, someone who focuses on a specific beat. They only do agriculture or they only do water, but that now works for the larger newsrooms. If they've got the financial muscle, then they can do that, but it doesn't always work that way. So then that means that people are just doing little drips of A, B, C, and D, and then you can't really interrogate a topic and be able to give a meaningful report. But then to bridge that gap, I'll get to that as well later. Okay, then platforms to engage the public and these different audiences that we spoke about. Media appearances. So you can appear on radio sometimes, and you don't even need to be. I'm sure you've also seen some scientists that are celebrities. They like this publicity, so they're constantly looking for opportunities. Where can they talk? Where can they discuss this? What's happening? Or I love the fact that being a communications person at this university, it's so fascinating when you get different characters. There's some scientists you contact, you're like, look, they need you for Good Morning Namibia tomorrow morning. Are you available? Others are like, well, no, I need time, which is okay because people have got different personalities. Then others are like, okay, great. Where's the address? Where, you know what I mean? So I love that because as much as there are also people that love self-promotion, love seeing themselves on TV, I love that. But because it's not only about you. You know, yes, fine, it is your face, it is your name that's out there, but you're representing a bigger institution and you're talking about things that really focus on contribute to nation building. So I like that. It makes my job easier. And then public talks, lectures. We normally have a lot of public lectures, say, at the university. So if there's just a topic that, somebody feels like they're passionate about, that can be arranged, and that's a public space. So you're just engaging ordinary people, you're engaging experts, and you talk about your field. You also learn something. So it's not only about you sharing the information, but a two-way street. What else can they teach you? So, and the only way you can ever find out another perspective of things beyond research, beyond reading, is talking to people. I think that is one of my favorite pastimes. I absolutely love talking to people. You get to learn things that people would not have told you when it's something written or if it's in an email, or you get so much more out of physical face-to-face interaction. And then workshops in schools. This here, okay, is quite specific, but just to highlight just the community outreach. What else can you do in your spare time? And we always talk about philanthropists, but it doesn't even start. And the perception I have of philanthropy work is when people are really established and they got a lot of money and they now want to give back to the community, but it doesn't need to be at that level. You don't have to have a lot to give, because as they always say, which you have, and I'm talking about in reference to knowledge, is 10 times, if not 100 times more than somebody else out there. And you could really help people with eye-opening knowledge, so to put it. So even in be it rural schools that don't have access to this kind of knowledge, you can be that mouthpiece. Collaborative projects where researchers and the public work together to gather data and inform policy. That too is a way, as I spoke about engagement. And then the use of the internet in the form of social media platforms, such as science blogs, Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, Clubhouse. So the blogs basically, it's just you telling your story, but obviously linked to your profession. And people love stories. People love hearing about other people's experiences. And, just a little bit of a side note, I say that there's nothing that people love more than talking about themselves, or talking about their feelings. So you tie all of that in a way that is linked to your profession. Then here, I specifically mentioned WhatsApp. I know sometimes you also get people that are like, no, look, I'm not a social media person. Yeah, they don't like social media. They feel either whether it's intimidated by it or it's just too much information, it's too noisy. So people are not into that. But I always say, if you're active on, and by active on WhatsApp, by active, I mean you're constantly viewing statuses, you're constantly, maybe you don't post, but you're present, you're always online. That is social media. And I say the trickiest, especially when you're saying, I just want to avoid a bit of distraction. WhatsApp to me is the sneakiest one of them all, because people are taking screenshots, people are taking videos from LinkedIn, from YouTube, from TikTok, and they're bringing it all to WhatsApp. So you block out everything else. You're like, no, I don't do social media, but you're there the whole day viewing statuses. You're on all of them. So that's how I see WhatsApp. But some of these things, I think it's just boundaries and discipline and embracing it. We are in a tech space, so you can't you can't run away. So just to embrace it, obviously, in moderation. Then strategies, this one is particularly for the media releases. Media release, just to touch on that, is basically just a statement, who, what, when, how, and when. So you're just explaining to people, okay, this is what I'm talking about. This is why it's important. If it's an event, when is it going to happen? So stuff like that. And the media really like that because it points them in the right direction. So they're not going to necessarily use that statement and publish an article from that. No, but it's just you're highlighting to them, this is what is important. So whether it's about an event that you're having or a paper perhaps that you published, you can do that. And then they can dig deeper from there. So this is just one way to get your information out there. And then science fairs, I'm sure everybody's familiar with what science fairs are. That is also nice because it's an event. They're going to come, they're going to take pictures. They want a lot of visual aid. That helps. It makes it lively. So it's not only, it helps to get the message out there because they're not only focusing on the text. This and so happens, they've got the support of the visual aids that makes it attractive. And then I think I also spoke about community outreach programs. And then if I can just touch a little bit on public relations officers at universities or research institutes. Now, these act as mediators between scientists. So sometimes you don't have to do the work. You don't have to go directly to the media to get your stuff out there. You can speak to the public relations officers. That is what they're there for. I'm speaking now in particular reference to a university space. So that's what they're there for. You highlight, okay, this is what I'm doing. How do we get it out there? How do we break it down? They do the interview for you. The nice thing about PR officers is that now you've got control. You see, because it's all about putting the university on the map and putting the university in the best light possible so we can talk about it. To say, okay, then you've got editorial right, so to put it. Obviously, you have to meet halfway because also the public relations officer knows what sells out there, you see. So for instance, just a funny story. So one of the researchers gave me, I think, like 2 pages of what he had done. I can't remember what the specific event was. Very deep stuff, you know, very technical, very academic, so he was like, okay, look, this is what I did. And it was great stuff. When I went through it, obviously there's all this jargon in my mind. So now I had to really try. That's always the funny thing as well about being a communications practitioner in a university space. You can't know everything, but you have to have an understanding at least, okay, what does this mean? So you have to really stretch yourself and you can ask the so-called dumb questions to say, what does this even mean? You know, what are you saying? So I read through the article, then eventually somewhere in the middle, I'm like, okay, that I think is the angle that we need to focus on. So now I call him, I'm like, Prof, sorry, but this is really boring. Obviously, he didn't take it, but we were teasing each other, so it was funny. But just to highlight, to say, look, whilst you're in your space, to your peers, in your faculty, this is awesome. But out there, people are going to read 1-2 lines and I'm done. Like it's too much. You're stressing me. It's overwhelming. My English bundles are done. I cannot be focusing and trying to Google. No, I'm done. So yeah, so that partnering with the people that are in these positions to make it happen for you, you know, it's a plus for you. It's a plus for the institution. It's on record. These are all things you put in your CV and you'd have gotten help for it. Okay, now some of the key things that you might want to look at when you're communicating. Impact. People want to know a story, want to know how a story is going to affect them. You know, it's not always possible. So these elements that I'm going through now, not all of them, you can't always take all of them, but this is just how you need to wrap your mind around these things. Think about that to say, why would the average person want to know this? You know, how can I package this differently? Just like perfect example. When at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, because it was so far out, yeah, on the continent, yes, you're reading about it in the papers, yes, it's getting worse, but it was still out there, you know, so you're not in panic mode yet, you're not reacting to it yet because it's not in close proximity, it's so far out there. So if you can, but eventually when it hit, we all woke up. So now if you look at stuff like that, you also, so when you're speaking to that audience or you're publishing or you're sending something in the media, think about localizing it. So you can highlight. So if you're a health expert, yes, so and so is happening in, I don't want to sound like I'm discriminating certain countries when I speak about COVID, but out there, when it's happening out there, what is you don't want to sound all doom and gloomy, but what is the impact locally? Let's put it in our local context. Have we had such a case? Are we ready? Should another pandemic hit? Stuff like that, because people want to know, why do I need to know this? I think we're in a world where there's just so much information. I'm done. I don't need, what I don't need to know, I don't need to know. So you need to look at that bit as well. Human interests, that's two. Whatever can bring out emotion, that helps a lot with people, where people feel like, okay, this is going to affect me. This is going to affect my family. I'm not saying make people panic, but just look at that bit to say, how are people going to feel about this when they read it? Make it relevant. Make it relevant and topical. It's called news for a reason. The word NEWS, news, that's new stuff. So you don't want to tell me stuff from the 80s. And no, tell me right now in this space, where are we? If we're talking about the water sector challenges, tell me about that right now in the practical context, things I can relate to right now. So that is very important. Tailored messages as well. We spoke about this, different audiences. Who are you talking to? What do you need to package differently to say, okay, I'm speaking to this audience now, this is what would be important to them. Media engagement, those understand the mandates of every different publication or media house. What are they trying to do? Are they trying to service the politicians? Are they trying to service the youth? Let's do that. Focus on solutions. Yeah. So not only to send out information and leave it hanging. It's debatable if you're trying maybe just to stimulate thought. You could say that, or just put out food for thought out there, but try have recommendations. So it's nothing conclusive. I think obviously everybody knows this with research. There's always a little open door, what if, and. So you want to leave it, but have those recommendations, get people thinking, and then they can take it from there. Proximity, we spoke about that. Then remember, communication alone is not everything, but communication coupled with comprehension. So I could stand here the whole day and tell you why this is important, and I don't get any feedback from you, and I leave the room and I'm like, okay, I did good. But I need to know, did you understand what I'm saying? Did I maybe miss a point? What do you think was lacking? Those kind of discussions, that kind of feedback. And that's why I think social media has brought a very new perspective of things, because now you get feedback in real time. The only problem is now you can't filter out if the haters come and they say, and this person is going A, B, and C, and D. You can block them if you like, but it's in real time, and you should be open to those challenges, because at the end of the day, it is not a one-way street. And then, social media. So now, do you think it is, let me ask maybe in the room, who's into social media? What I mean by me. Thank you. Just for interest's sake, Ms. Director, which platforms are you on? Okay, something happened. Is it still on? Sorry, Jimmy, is it on? Is it on? I think try to speak maybe. Can you?
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Imagine, I realized in this whole space, I have nothing else to say except to shoot and say so.
Yes. So tell us which platforms you're on.
I'm on LinkedIn for professional purposes. I find it quite useful to understand what's happening, especially in the water space and in STEAM, science, technology, the whole STEAM field. I also am quite active on Facebook, because that's how I relate to family and friends around the world. To a limited extent, Twitter. I don't tweet much. I only tweet when I've been asked to. Hashtag this when I put.
Yes. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Anybody else before I speak to that? Just sir in the back. Yeah. If you are you on social media? And if so, which platforms and why? Just very briefly.
Facebook and LinkedIn, and similarly LinkedIn for professional purposes. And, Facebook just to see much other things are not related to professional things.
Okay. Okay, great. I like that. You see, because it must be strategic, even on the platforms you're on. It's not just about being on every single platform. I'm standing here speaking and I'm on all these other platforms, but it's work related in the sense that I just need to have a rough idea. Okay, what is this one is what is this about? But I also have my go-tos. And like Rennie said, especially I think I highly recommend LinkedIn, for professional networking. That is a safe space. A lot of people then, I've also heard people say that as much as they like LinkedIn, they tend to experience a lot of imposter syndrome. You know what that is? Yeah, where you basically feel like, oh my goodness, I'm a fraud. People are going to find out, oh my goodness, this and this is doing such great things. But I'll tell you this, I think it's all about packaging. I've seen people, the person is just talking about how they got a driver's license, but the way they are telling this story makes it sound so great. They're taking a picture, they've just gotten from the driving instructor, all these things. So it's about packaging and how you sell yourself. And you cannot allow yourself to have imposter syndrome. Actually, though, I do say to a certain extent, it's okay because you need to keep your ego in check. You need that little voice, but keep it back there. Don't let it to an extent where it cripples you. Because they also said that they need, so bravery is not the absence of fear. What basically that is even though, yes, you might feel intimidated, you're doing all these things, but you're still brave enough to do it, So you still push yourself, make those mistakes, burn, embarrass yourself every now and then. That's how you learn. So I think that definitely with social media platforms, look at what you're trying to communicate and let it be strategic. Why are you on it? One thing I also like, though, I think it's nice to be able to be on different platforms. It allows you to take up different roles. In LinkedIn, you're the serious person, you're very structured, you're very this. WhatsApp, you're chatting to your friends and family, that's it. TikTok, you can go crazy. You can be a completely different person. However, one thing you do need to be cautious about is, after all, you are one brand. So if there's some really offensive things you're doing on TikTok, this is social media. It's going to creep up one day, especially when you now make it. Then people are going to say, no, but I saw A, B, C, and D in 2000 and whatever. So be all of that, be on these different platforms, but keep in mind your brand is one. Yeah, so you can be applicable to the different audiences, but you're still one person. So yeah. Like I said, know what various social media platforms are for. Cross-posting. Cross-posting, I'm sure you're familiar with. It's basically, I've seen this with a lot of companies.
Slide is off.
Even is it off even?
It's on, but it must be the project.
Oh, yes. Okay, I think for our colleagues online, if they can just bear with us. Also, Christine, if you can help, if there are any comments online, then thank you so much. Okay, so I think we just need to fix the screen. I think should be. Okay, there we go. Thank you. Yeah, cross-posting is basically, I've seen, so there are tools that you can use. I've seen this for company social media accounts where you post on one thing and then it takes it across to all your platforms. Yeah, I like it. It's fine. It's convenient. But a part of me also feels that you just need to repackage your messages for the different audiences. I can't use the tone I use on LinkedIn to, maybe I'm sitting and I'm talking a video and put that on TikTok. It could work, but I just find it better to have custom made work, and it's taxing. It's a lot more work, but that's why it's better to just find one or two social media platforms and master those. That's my opinion. Then this one as well speaks to your brand. Don't publish what you wouldn't put on a billboard. Yeah, a billboard where everybody can see. So yes, fine. We always think, like I said, now with the screenshots and be funny. It's nice. It's, you know, it's okay, but don't be offensive. Somebody said the other day that you should, especially when you're in the workplace, you should be funny. You should be humorous with your colleagues, but not to an extent that you now need to be taken to HR. You know, then you've crossed the line, then you've offended someone. So be able to pick up on these blurred lines and these invisible lines. Diversify your content. So not only posting where it's just text, people like pictures. Yeah. People want to see videos. People want to see infographics. Use different tools to communicate to people. Use different messages, different means. It's not enough. People don't just want to see text. And also use it as short as possible, which is very difficult because you want to put in a lot of information. But what I see usually works very well. Rather a very short post, then put a link to it. If you happen to have a blog, then that helps a lot. Then for more information, A, B, C, and D. You see, so whoever else wants to read, they can follow that link. Do not feed the trolls. Y'all know what trolls are, right? Yeah. And I think regardless of who you are, there's that one person you will post your stuff. I did A, B, C, and D. I got this accolade. Everybody's congratulating you. But there's that one person that's just like, it's not that deep, full stop. So now you start ignoring everybody else that's giving you so much credit. And you see that one post and that one post stands out. So I think by do not feed the trolls is don't respond to such stuff. They don't engage. If you're if your buttons are really pushed, fight back rather with facts. Don't directly communicate to that person. Make it a broad thing. So always keep your cool. It's not easy because there are people who push and push and push, but you want to keep it classy. So yeah. Then tackling misinformation. This is a massive thing, especially on social media right now. And it goes viral. So you have the obligation as researchers, as scientists, as people in this space, as people with the knowledge to demystify some of this information, because how else are we going to fight or win this war? You know, so you have that tool, and it's an advantage, the fact that everybody can publish to a wide audience. You no longer need to be a certain influential person or to pay for space in the media. Everybody now has that, but we have to, I don't know how this war will ever be won, but for certain, everybody needs to play their role in their corner. And then scheduling tools. This I've seen mostly for company pages. I'm speaking more to company pages here. So for organizations where I'd actually need to do some research to find out if you can do this for your personal accounts. But this is now when you're now really deep into social. So you don't have to post every single day. You can actually just have your calendar. This is what you want to do, and you schedule your posts. So there are tools that are there, and it will, if you put Friday, 2:00, at 2:00, that post will go out on Friday at 2 because you've scheduled it. So everything is there. Like I said, I'm speaking more to organization pages. I'm not too sure about the individual ones, but there's so many tools and so many apps out there. I'm sure there's one that can make it happen, and it just helps.
Yeah, Twitter has that.
Oh, great. For personal accounts. That's really awesome. Now you can tell which pages I'm not so active on. I will, confession, I'm big on Facebook. It's so old school, guys. But I'm big on Facebook. Let me explain why. I like the fact that I'm not limited in terms of content, in terms of video. I feel like it's very old school now because people are just now moving away from Facebook. But I'm not limited in terms of text. That Twitter thing, guys, I'm like, when is it changing? I can't. Why must what's the word limit again on Twitter? Yes. So, what am I supposed to do with 140 characters? That makes life so difficult. So that's why I sometimes prefer Facebook, like I said as well, with also not making it too long. But yeah, I think I have to catch up with the world soon. Then great, then just bringing it down to the university. This is one of the tools that the university uses to communicate to the media, or to the public space, internally, externally. So you'll see it's just the different stories from what's happening on campus. It's the researchers in the field, it's them engaging communities It's what we're doing in the Etosha Pan. So just stuff like that really just shows what is happening in the field. So beyond just the stiff photos, you also want to really bring some visual aid. So newsletters, as much as it actually really works because people like reading these stories. So it's very popular. So that's quite encouraging. Then some of the social media platforms for the university. There's also, how many of you follow the research innovation? Chiamba is a fan. I see him a lot, so that's good. Thank you, Dr. Mo. Thank you, sir, in the back. Christine. Christine, I'm not sure about this. I'm not convinced. This director. Okay, thank you. Please. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad it worked. Please like the research innovation and partnerships page at NUST. We try to put a lot of science comm related stuff on that page. This one is still coming up, the SASSCAL Graduate Studies Program. We're going to have a YouTube page. And for everyone, Jimmy, that's been asking when are we putting up the seminars, all of those are soon going to be up on that page. So it'll be very easy for everybody to access. And of course, the website, the SGSP website. Okay, just before we're about to wrap up, just be real quick. The benefits, again, just a summary of communicating science. You're educating the public to understand perspectives of lay communities and contribute to their actual needs. What I mean by that is sometimes because you've done the theory bit, you're on this level, yeah? So you're speaking from this level. You're like, okay, this is what would make sense. We need to do this for the communities. They need A, B, C, and D. This tech is going to be so great. But if you don't come down to their level, sometimes you come up with all these great ideas, all these great recommendations, all these great innovations. Then you've wasted a lot of effort. Unlike if you started it in reverse, actually engaging the communities, getting an understanding from their perspective, then design whatever it is that you're designing from their perspective as well. So to bring together the best of both worlds, so to put it. So you can't only decide for people, this is what they need. They also need to tell you what they need. And if what they need is not great, then you need to be able to convince them as to why the alternative approach is better. Networking opportunities as well. It really is so great to put yourself out there, especially for LinkedIn, yeah? Because sometimes people don't only know you from your previous job or your other spaces, but on LinkedIn, they can be like, okay, and repeated messages that they see. They're like, okay, I think I like what she says. I think she's making a lot of sense. And that opens other doors for you. So it's a great networking opportunity. And also even if you're in the newspapers, for instance, if you're into traditional media, because I've seen a lot of people that are also quite bold enough to publish opinion pieces, weekly opinion pieces in the newspapers. The newspapers are always looking for content. So stuff like that, it helps because it also puts your personal brand out there. It builds support for science. It connects a broad audience to scientific communities, an opportunity for multidisciplinary approaches, attracts funding opportunities. Yeah. So when you've put yourself out there, there's always somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. Then, you're really putting yourself out there. You're like, I'm looking for this. You'll be so surprised how word travels, how things get out there, and how you're able to show and say, okay, this is what I've worked in. You've got links for it. So you're not just talking, you're not just showing us a CV. Yeah. You actually have links that can take us and we can physically see tangible things that you're talking about beyond the publications, beyond the journals, rather. And then putting the continent's experts on the global stage. When I ask you, just off the top of your head, who's a famous scientist that you know? Now I'm talking about the world over. I'm not talking about just in our local context. Thank you, because that is the answer I get every single time without fail. Wow. Do you see how that is? We're talking about nothing wrong with that. He had his legacy. It lives on. That is absolutely amazing. But should we always think that far? We should also have local names. We should have African names. There should be a name that pops up right on top of your head. But how are we going to get that if we don't step up into these spaces, if we don't step up onto the global stage? Yeah. So I'm sure even if we read his biography, if we read everything, I'm sure he also made a lot of mistakes. Thank God there wasn't social media at the time, so he's okay. He didn't get the trolls. But do you see that? So just that one answer, we're talking about something totally way out there. Let's bring it home. And with that said, thank you. Any questions? Any comments? Miss Rainey? Please.
You're right. I missed the first 30 minutes of the presentation. I missed the first part of the presentation, but I just got reminded when I saw your last page to say one other thing that's important when communicating is the use of logos and how they should be used. If you're not sure, at times it's just good to consult on the protocol for the logos. It's not always the case that you can just plug them in whatever order you want. If it's a USAID funded program, they'll tell you the USAID logo should be positioned here. The size will be bigger than the rest. We're in this far right corner, so I just thought of it when I saw your last slide, say this also communicates a lot, even how these logos are positioned. You can interpret a lot from just the ordering of the logos.
Yes,
Just
definitely.
of my.
Thank you so much for that, Ms. Rainey. Definitely a valid point. Logos are a science on its own. Yeah. So this is, if I can just actually speak to that, this is an approved order. We cannot change this order. It was thought through, it was discussed at length, and it actually means a lot. So you'll see there in the top left corner, that's BMBF. So they're the overall parent. Yeah. So we have them first. Right across, we've got SASSCAL that are also equally, you all know that that is our donor, but we start with the mother, then we move on to, I don't know if I can say the father, or is it vice versa? Who's without being, okay, let me not do that. Yeah, okay, let me stay away from let me stay away from the sex bit, let me do that. But yes. This is the order is very important, and it's the order of importance. The reason why we have SGSB in the middle, because this is what it's about, So it is SGSB right now. That's what I'm speaking to. But every logo here has a role. It's hosted by the Namibia University of Science and Technology in collaboration with the International Center for Water Resources and Global Change. So everything has a role as to why it is there. So it's a thing. Even when we design posters, say maybe the layout is different and everything has to be in a certain line, you have to make sure that you get the order right. So it's basically an order of importance. Any questions from the floor? Yes, Alex?
Should I use the microphone?
Yes, please.
It's on, but
Yes,
hello.
please.
Okay,
Hello
so
there.
I have, I guess, one thing to share and then one question for you. Just wanted to share that when I was in graduate school, a lot of my outreach, I'd go to talk about science.
Yes.
And school children or a lot of people in the public just wanted to know what it was like to be a scientist. And a lot of teachers would say, just tell my students about what you do. Because I think a lot of children, at least in the US where I'm from, have this perception that scientists are kind of robotic and they just live in the lab and wear white coats. So just showing pictures of me being outside and frankly being a female and collecting data was a learning opportunity in science, which I just wanted to share that seemed to be valuable to my audiences.
Yeah. If I could just speak to that, before I forget.
Yes.
Sorry. I like that a lot because especially when you mentioned the female bit, representation is everything. When you speak about, just like when I asked, when you think about a scientist, who comes to mind? The gentleman in the back made reference to Albert Einstein. That picture is the picture that he probably has of a scientist. And that picture might be what also a young child visualizes. So if you stand there in this very diverse audience with your very diverse backgrounds, and I'm a researcher, I'm a scientist, they too feel they can relate. And you know, when you see somebody that looks like you, somebody that sounds like you, it makes the dream within reach. Thank you for that.
Thanks. I also just wanted to ask you, as an expert in communication, if you could talk about the value of storytelling. You talked a little bit about emotions and how that could be used in communicating science.
Yeah, storytelling is very important, like I said earlier on, but I think maybe you could also bring in your expertise from your side, especially from across the world. What do you interpret as storytelling and what have been the benefits thereof? In your experiences, when you talk to, you made reference now to the school kids, how was that when you tell them, look, I'm Alex, A, B, C, and D, how did they respond?
I think in terms of storytelling that I'm able to remember right now, it's more stories about being in the field and collecting data and what it's like to be outside camping as a scientist, living in the mountains for a month, collecting data every day. So those types of stories. But one thing that I'm not very good at, and I think this is more of what I was thinking of because I would like to be better at it, is creating sort of stories to illustrate scientific concepts. I tend to just try to talk about the science itself and simplify it, but I think sometimes giving people an analogy for something they're familiar with is really, really great. I'm not sure how to build that skill.
Yeah, I think that that's a very valid point. Again, it goes down to the audience and who you're speaking to. For instance, I did a course once on communication for development. So whilst this was not necessarily linked to science, it was just communication in the broad perspective. But when you're, say, for instance, at the grassroots level, you're in the communities, in the rural areas, for instance, that don't have people that don't have communities that don't necessarily have access to videos, maybe that you could play for them or something of that sort. You then need to get creative, and should you have the funding, those are because I've seen some organizations come up with development organizations that then have plays. You know, as old schools, there's scenes you're like, who's gonna be interested in a play? But you'll be thank you. You'll be so surprised how much you can get out of that and how you can, because they are visualizing it. We're visual beings. We see something, it makes it more real. So I think it really depends on the context, and you must know the target audiences and you take it from there. If you're on the other side of town, say a fancy school, for instance, then you do a video, then you do a bit of a podcast, you do stuff that's applicable to them, a TikTok, something. I'm sure there's some organization or some scientists that some people are getting so creative these days. You want to bring that out to them. So you need to know your target audience and you craft your messages from there. Questions? Comments? Yes, Faith? Thank you. I'd forgotten about the mic. Christine, sorry, if there's anything online, please let us know. Thank you.
No, thanks very much. Is it open?
No. No, it's just, she tried to, maybe somebody can help her?
It's on.
Hello.
Okay, there we go. There we go.
No, thank you very much, Mrs. Brandt, for the presentation. Yeah, I think, yeah, it also brings, I think, to mind the diverse opportunities that are there, and you can also work to your strength on which platform you'd actually want to focus on, either developing a career or even developing individually. So the one contribution I have, I've got a contribution and a question.
Okay.
So the one contribution about storytelling as well. In South Africa, for the National Development Plan, their Vision 2030, I think they use something like harvest, what is it? A harvesting of graphics or graphic harvesting, where you're doing storytelling, but then someone is sketching something in the background as well. And apparently it had greater impact of communicating across the different people, such a strategic document. But I think it's been summarized into a 6-minute video with graphic harvesting and the like. So I think that's also another thing that's worth exploring to see how we can communicate science to the different people, graphic harvesting. And then, this is also for me, just for clarity, is there a protocol, say, if you'd like to engage a media house or if you've been approached by a media house to talk about your research, or they want to do a publication on maybe the work that we are doing, what is the protocol when it comes to SGSP and NUST?
Okay.
Engaging the media houses. Thank you.
Okay, I'll speak to that. If any of my colleagues, the Secretariat is here, if you have any comments on that, please add on. But definitely that one is pretty straightforward because you are linked to the SGSP. That is something that would need to come through our office because we always need to portray our brand in a particular way, and you are affiliated to this brand. So that's just something that would need to go through us. We talk about it. You tell us what it is that you want to communicate. We also would know the media space, so we would know how to craft these messages. So that one is fairly simple. And I think it even goes across for, look, I can't speak to other universities, but the moment you're affiliated to a certain organization, you do need to kind of run it by them. So I've heard people say, I was speaking in my individual capacity, and I always say, that doesn't work, because you might get away with it in the sense that if it's all good and clean and everything, but the moment something becomes controversial, what is the media going to do? They're going to link you to a bigger organization. So we're not just going to say, okay, Faith, an ordinary citizen, say to A, B, C, and D. No, we need to link you to something bigger to make it juicier, for lack of a better term. But yeah, so just for safety, it would need to be vetted on our side with at the same time ensuring flexibility and so forth. And yeah.
So the go-to person is you.
Yes, please. Thank you. Okay. In the absence of any other questions or comments, thank you so much. I think we are doing so good, if not too good on time. Then, yeah, I don't know, any comments from Secretariat before I wrap up? No?
Just to appreciate.
The mic, please. Sorry.
I just want to say, just to appreciate Kuda for the time you have taken. There's a reason why I had to rush back, not in solidarity, well, it's solidarity plus. I really wanted to learn also, so I've also learned a lot from this presentation. So I think on behalf of the Secretariat, we really want to appreciate the time you've taken to take us through and give us tips, and please allow us to follow up. And for some weird reason, she decided to call me Miss Rain. She's never called me Miss.
We're in a formal space.
Okay.
Yeah.
So please don't get ideas. I'm still ready to.
Yeah.
Just from my end to appreciate you taking the time. I didn't ask the colleague, you're with introduction. I just want to appreciate the students.
Oh.
And I also want to appreciate Alexandra for making the time. She's a visiting researcher. And
to people online as well.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes, thank you for that. Alexandra is a visiting researcher. She's under the Directorate of Research, Innovation and Partnerships, but she's got a very keen interest on climate change and water issues.
Okay.
So you find her present engaging, and feel free as students to engage. She's one of our peers. She's a resource, create networks. You'll never know when our roads and paths will meet again and where you might need to engage, but never in your capacity as SGSP. Like she said, that's her portfolio, but you're researchers and this is an academic space. If you need ideas, hints, things, she's a resource at your disposal. And I just wanted to appreciate also the online participants. This was not my role. That's Monde's role. But since I'm sitting here, I can just pretend not to realize the effort that has been put into making this seminar possible. So to the Secretariat, Monde in particular, and the team behind the scenes, it's really appreciated, and well done to the participants online and physically, and to the presenter for making this possible.
Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone for making time this afternoon. I think that's it.